you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here in the Sick Podcast Network. He is Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy. Shortly, Pierre will be joined by the one and only Scotty Bowman. Unfortunately, though, under some sad circumstances, as many of you know out there, legendary Hall of Fame goalie Ken Dryden passed away over the weekend. Really took the hockey world by surprise because nobody really knew that he was suffering from cancer, Pierre. And I saw the email come in late night. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw an email from the Canadians, and yeah, it just could have took me aback. But you knew Ken, you grew up more in that era, Pierre. So I'm wondering, for someone that grew up watching those teams and the connection you had to them and to him, how much this is affecting you right now.
First time I saw him play was he was playing for the Montreal Voyageurs. He wasn't playing for the Montreal Canadiens. He had just come from the national championship at Cornell University in 1967. He spent some time with the national team in Canada. But the first time I saw him play, he was playing for Montreal Voyageurs in the Forum. They had moved their team from Halifax. And believe it or not, his backup goalie, one of them anyways, was the late Wayne Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
And Wayne and Ken were a dynamic duo. Eventually, they went on to win the Cup as a goaltending tandem in 1973. And I can't wait to talk to Scotty about it because both of them have passed away in the same calendar year.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so I all I'd say is this. I always thought Ken Dryden made everything around him better, whether it was playing his position, whether it was speaking so eloquently, whether it was on the radio or television, writing books, everything he did, there was a certain level of perfection. And what I remember probably the most about him was 71, third period, Montreal Canadiens, Chicago Blackhawks. Canadiens have a 3-2 lead. They were down 2-0 in the game. Jacques Lemaire scored from center ice against Tony Esposito, who was originally drafted by Montreal. Dryden wasn't even, people forget this, Dryden wasn't even drafted by Montreal. He was drafted by Boston. Yep. You know, it was a trade that happened, I think, 17 days after the draft. Wow. You know, he wasn't even at Cornell yet. But anyways, and then Jacques Lemaire scored from center ice and Esposito, and then Henri Richard scored 2 goals to put the Canes up 3-2. And Dryden moves from his left to his right to shut down the late Jimmy Pappin. And to this day, there you go, Jimmy. Wow, that's amazing. You guys have that. That's the save that was heard around the world. I mean, it's just, man, the picture of the gentleman right in the slot, the left-hand shot, number 4. That's his last professional game, Jean Beliveau.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing stuff there. Yeah, I only met Ken once, Pierre. It was when the Canadians did their centennial season, 08-09, and he was there. You know, they had a lot of the legends obviously came in. And I tweeted this the other day. I'll never forget this quote again. Because at the time, Tim Thomas was starting to really come onto the scene. He went on to win his first Vezina that season. And he was really rolling at that point. And I said, you know, Kenny, I don't know how much you've gotten to watch of Tim Thomas, but, you know, what's your take on him so far? Why is he having this success? And he goes, I don't know, but he's a lot like me. He's very unorthodox, and he comes up with a big save somehow. I don't know how he does it or how I did it, but he does it. And he said that's also the way I like to think as well. And I see a lot of that in Tim Thomas. So he felt the connection to Tim Thomas, which I thought was very interesting.
I remember doing the Stanley Cup final in 11, and Sam Flood, who invented Inside the Glass and so many great innovations for the National Hockey League when it came to the television product. And I remember we were sitting in a restaurant in Vancouver, and he says, describe Tim Thomas. And I said, one of the most aggressive goalies I've ever seen. John Casey, who played for Minnesota, was very similar, not obviously as big as Timmy. And I eventually came up with, because of my football background, I said, you know, Tim Thomas plays a position like a linebacker. That's how he plays.
I remember you
and so we actually showed instances in that series. We made a tape where he would come charging out and make physical contact. And it looked very much like, you know, what a Lawrence Taylor would do in football or a Nick Bonacani would do in football back in the day. I mean, he's just aggressive as all get out. But again, that save on Pap, and that's the one. And Dryden had an amazing run. When you think about it, 67, they win the NCAA tournament at Cornell. He's a 3-time All-American. Then he wins the Stanley Cup in 71. wins again in 73, but in 72, he plays in the most important two games. He plays game 6 and game 8 in the Super Series over in Russia.
Right.
And game 6, and I'm going to ask Scotty about this because he'll remember. Most of the people listening to us right now won't remember. It's so many games ago and so many years ago. But I remember we got a chance to watch it. My 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Parsons, let us watch it on a black and white TV. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget Mrs. Parsons and Mrs. Cousineau, 2 of the best teachers I ever had. They brought in this black and white TV
so we could
watch it. Anyways, in game 6, it was 3-2. It was a tight game. Dryden had to make some unbelievable saves. But in game 7, like, it was a massive game. It ended up being 6-5. Paul Henderson scores a winner. But there was freaking action everywhere, like timely goaltending mattered. And that's the one thing. I bet you Scotty will tell you this because I know we've had a lot of discussions about it. I hope at least he says it. Dryden might have been the master of timely saves. Because when he played for Montreal, he didn't get that many opportunities to make big saves. But there were, in every game, forced save opportunities, and he always seemed to come up with them at the right time, almost at the right time.
You know what? I'm sure Scotty. I was just listening to Scotty. He's probably doing a series of interviews since Ken passed, but he's on with our good friend Mitch Melnick, and they were talking about, one of the interesting things was he didn't always see, like you just said, he didn't have a lot of action, and sometimes that can be a detriment to most goalies, right? Because they want to have those shots, they want to be in a rhythm, and he said, but it didn't matter for Ken. He just still was able to. I'm ready. Let's go. And then he wouldn't see a shot for 10 minutes or something. And then he'd come up with another big save. And that's an amazing talent to have as a goalie.
Brodeur had that. Because if you think back to the way the Devils played under Jacques Lemaire or under Larry, even under Claude Julien, even though they didn't win the cup, or under Pat Burns, the late Pat Burns, they always played the same way. They congested the neutral zone. The stretch pass wasn't allowed to happen. They had these behemoths on defense led by, obviously, Scotty Stevens and Kenny Danico, Sean Chambers. They had just massive guys back there. And so he didn't get a lot of shots, Marty. But when he did, more times than not, especially key times, Marty made some amazing saves. And all the things after Ken passed, and I heard about it really late on Friday night, early Saturday morning. I got up real early Saturday and I went and did some research just because I was, there's a lot of stuff I do remember and other stuff I wasn't sure. So I want to check it out. And I was like, okay, he won 6 cups in 8 years. I think everybody knows that. That's an amazing thing. Okay, that's amazing. But then I started going like, Brodeur won 3 cups, 2 Olympic gold medals, but he played 22 years.
Yeah.
Jacques Plante won 6 cups, same as Dryden, the 2 winningest goalies in that history. Jacques Plante played 18 years. Now, most of those cups, 5 of the 6 were 5 in a row with Montreal for Toe Blake from 55 to 60. Okay, I understand. I get it. Patrick Roy won 4 cups. He played 19 years.
Yeah.
So I hear people say, well, Dryden didn't have the wins. No, he didn't have the wins. He played 8 years.
He won the games of count.
He didn't play 22. He didn't play 19. He didn't play 18. This is the one, and I can't wait to talk to Scotty about this because this should be a celebration of life for Ken Dryden and all the things he did on the ice and off the ice. Nobody knows it better than Scotty outside of Ken's family. Here's one I can't wait to throw at him. I once asked Scotty the best goalie that he had ever seen. This is when I was working for him. And he said, I think Terry Sawchuk. I haven't seen one person or heard one person even mention Terry Sawchuk.
Yeah.
We got all these lists coming. If you're going to do a list, please know some of the guys that happened before. Terry Sawchuk won 4 Stanley Cups and 4 Vezinas.
Wow.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing we've noticed, Pierre. And I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but there's been a lot of lists coming out of greatest players, greatest this, greatest that. And it's almost like they're just handing the task off to somebody that seems to be under 30 years old at most, and they're just forgetting generations. Things happened before the 80s. Things happened before the 70s and before the 60s. And I'm with you. There needs to be a little more research done when these greatest all-time lists are being made.
Doug Harvey, and I only saw him at the end, and Scotty coached him, and Scotty grew up with him, around him in Montreal. Doug Harvey, before Bobby Orr, I don't think you could say there was a better defenseman. Now, again, I saw him at the end, not at the beginning.
Right.
But I don't even, on a lot of those lists, I don't even see Doug Harvey's name. And I can tell you, as a kid growing up in Montreal, Doug Harvey was larger than life. There was Jean Beliveau, Doug Harvey, Jacques Plante, and then everybody else came behind. I know there was millions of great players.
Yep.
But I can just tell you, from 65 to 71, when Dryden came, you had Beliveau, you had Harvey, you had Plante. And you had other guys too, but those were the three. Those were the guys that were on the top of the mountaintop.
Pierre, again, like it was before my time, so I get stories from you and from my late friend Russ Conway and what have you. But I'm wondering when Ken Dryden was playing, when he was starting a game, you go in some sports, Pierre, where maybe a team's got an ace pitcher, right, or you got an amazing quarterback like a Tom Brady or a Pedro Martinez, and there's just sort of this sense of no matter what happens, we're going to come out of this with a win. Like it just. You build this belief in that player. Was that kind of how it was with Ken Dryden?
I think so. I wasn't on the team, obviously, and I wasn't coaching, and I wasn't old enough to even be around the group. But I watched every game.
Yeah.
I watched every single game. And there were some nights where you couldn't watch, you had to listen. Like Sunday nights, you had to listen. It wasn't a bad listen. It was Danny Gallivan and Dick Irvin. Yep. It wasn't a bad listen. So, I don't think I'm going to say from 69 to 79, I don't believe I ever missed a Montreal Canadiens game.
And you just had that feeling probably going on every game.
Every 71, after Ken beat Boston in the first round, and you ask anybody, if it weren't for Beliveau in game 2, they had this unbelievable comeback. Beliveau led the comeback.
Yep.
If it weren't for
that was in Boston, right?
In Boston.
Yep.
If it weren't for Jean then, there's no way Montreal wins, but then Dryden took over and he planted a seed of doubt in the Bruins' mind. Scotty wasn't even coaching there. He was in St. Louis.
That's right, because he took over the following year.
He took over in 72 after Al McNeil left.
Well,
so, yeah.
Let's go ask Scotty about that and about all things Ken Dryden right now as he joins us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
You're doing better than okay. You look fantastic.
You do.
Some days are better than others, but today's a good day.
Well, again, we're sorry for your loss, Scotty. I just heard you on with Mitch as well. I'm sure you're doing a number of interviews right now, but I guess as you start to reflect on Ken, whether it's your relationship with him or his career, what's been the most common thread that's coming up when you talk about him?
Well, he always had a plan. He lived his life very organized. He was busy, and he didn't seem to get stressed, though. Even when he was playing, like I said, we moved their practices from 10 o'clock after a game to noon. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know that at the time he was doing some courses, and he wanted to know if he could. Was that the only time we could do it? And I said, yeah, that's the only time, and he accepted it, but he organized his own schedule. But, well, I don't know, Pierre, if Pierre ever mentioned this, but Pierre is a college guy. And I got a note from this girl in Buffalo. She played goal for Cornell. I don't think it was big hockey in that day, was it, Pierre?
No, it would not have been big at that time. No.
She played for Cornell woman, and she sent me his stats. She said, he played 4 years. They won one national. They won the East a lot.
67. Ken won the nationals in 67.
76 wins, 4 losses, 1 tie.
Yeah.
I mean, he was getting ready to go to Montreal, I guess. Here's what else it said. Goals against 1.59. Wow. Save percentage 93.9. But so he must have got some shots. Were they what about RPI? Were they any good?
They were good. RPI was good. BU was good. University of Minnesota was good. But Cornell with Ned Harkness, who I know you knew very well, Ned Harkness did an amazing job at Cornell. And that building to this day, Liner Rink, is such a hard place to play. Scotty, I have to ask you, Ken was drafted by Boston.
Yeah, it was.
And so I know you were a huge part of the Canadian scouting staff. We've never talked about this, to just be transparent for our audience. Who would have been somebody that would have told Sam Pollock, this would have been a good guy to pick up?
I have no idea because he must have. I did the draft in '63. They called me in after 3 years in Peterborough and 2 years in Ottawa. Lou Passador, the head scout for Eastern Canada, left to go to the Rangers. Emil Francis picked him up, and they just called me in and said, "No more coaching. You got to take his place." And I did the draft that year. It's the first draft they ever had because the teams, there was so many players that the teams, Canadians had so many sponsored teams, and the league said, this is not going to work because, I mean, there's not going to be any junior teams around New York or Chicago, even Boston. So what they did is any players that weren't on sponsored teams, they had a draft for. So Ken was playing, as I found out later, I never went to those games.
Etobicoke.
He was playing midget for Etobicoke Indians, but I went junior B. I saw St. Mike's play, and the St. Mike's junior A players were all on the Leafs sponsored list, but the junior B weren't. And we were, Montreal had starting to get a pretty good team again. You know, they were really, they were disappointed they didn't win in 61, 62. So there was a player in St. Mike's, Gary Monahan. He was a good skater, strong kid, good checker. We weren't looking for offense. And, we missed Pete Mahovlich. He was a big gangly kid playing in St. Mike's. And the same team as Monahan. And a lot of people went to see them play. I don't know how Montreal, we had the first pick, but there was something to do with a French pick that I wasn't involved in. I don't know why. And apparently Montreal, there was a player in Timmins. He was a French Canadian, Guy Allen, and the Bruins wanted him. So I think the Canadians had to draft him, supplement. It was so mixed up. And they drafted Allen for Boston, and Boston drafted Dryden for Montreal.
And then they were traded for one another.
They were traded, and I was the head scout, and I never saw Dryden play. The only time I ever heard about Dryden was when he was in Cornell, and but Monahan ended up playing in the NHL. He was number 1 pick. Number 2 was a player that never played, Romanoshi or something. And then the 3rd pick was Pete Mahovlich, Detroit. Detroit picked Pete. So Pete always said, I missed him, I said, well, Pete, you weren't as good then. We picked it up. That's how they got Dryden. But it was a prearranged trade.
Okay. See, that's good. I didn't know that. I knew Scotty would know. So there you
go. I think he played 4 years in school at Cornell, came to Montreal, and that's when they wanted to sign him. And he said, I can't sign right now. I'm going to McGill. I think he had plans maybe of trying to, but Sam said, no, you turn your pro. I looked up his record. He played 33 games for the Voyageurs in Montreal.
In Montreal.
And that's when he was in his exams. That's when he had a week of exams and they had a day off at the end of it, and he played the games in Quebec City because that was Philly's farm team. So he went to Quebec City and got beat 7-4. He told me the story, and he said, I got home. I lived in NDG, Montreal suburb. I wasn't married then, and all of a sudden, then a message came in. Come down to the forum. He said, I figured, well, that's the end of playing just home games. And that's when Sam Pollock said, how's your schedule at McGill? He said, I'm done. He said, oh, good. He said, I want you to go on the trip and play a couple of games. We're going on a 6-game trip. Well, he won the first 2 and they kept playing him. So he didn't lose a game. He won 6 in a row. He might have tied 1 or 2, Pierre. I don't know. Yeah. He didn't lose. And that's how he ended up playing the playoffs against Boston.
Jimmy, you know what? I gotta ask Scotty because we're on a roll here, and this is such unbelievable information. Scotty, Ronnie Caron and Floyd Curry were coaching that Montreal team. I used to go to the Voyageur games all the time. You were in St. Louis then. Ronnie and Floyd were coaching that team. don't tell me they were talking to Ken about how to play goal. I don't think they were.
Nobody.
Right?
Nobody. You know, because I mean, you know, he was always, you know, he had a full calendar all the time. He did like to, one thing with him, the two things that he wanted to play all the time, but he wasn't bad with, you know, we got a good draft pick in '72. We got shot number 3. That obviously came from some other team. But then we got Michel Larocque at 6. I mean, he's the best goalie available.
Yeah.
And he had to go and play a year in Nova Scotia. The first year, 72, 73. Then he became the regular goalie with us. Like, you know, he had a good year. I'm not sure if they won or not, but he was good in the American League. We brought him in. And he used to play between 20 and 25 games a year. Lost very few, but Ken was the number 1 goalie. Ken averaged 55 games out of the 80 a year, because he got injured not injured, but he got a bad back every January halfway through the season. I don't know the medical name, but it was called tall man's back, and he had to take 2 weeks off. Wow. And then Bunny would play. We called Bunny, Michelle. He would play those games, and that's when I told you the story about they only lost 8 games the 1 year. We got beat
76, 77, yeah.
Boston beat us on Halloween in October 31st of 70. That would be 76. Yeah, because we played the playoffs. And Kenny didn't lose a game either, but he played. So after when he was resting, I started playing Michelle, and we were continuing to win. And so I just kept playing them. And that's when Kenny came to me 2.5 weeks before the season. He said, am I going to play any more home games? He said, I assume I'm going to play in the playoffs. He said, I'd like to get in a game or two. He hadn't played for 6 weeks at home. Oh my gosh. I was just playing him on the road games, and Michelle played the home. But, you know, then you know, he went in and he won 12 out of 14.
Yep.
Scotty, obviously, for those who don't know, he wrote a book with you about you.
He did? Yeah.
And I just wanted, you know, how did that come about? You know, how did he present it to you that he wanted to do this with you?
Well, he had written a game. That was the one that he wrote while he played he knew it was his last season, so he kept notes. That's why that game book is so authentic, because he every game he programmed the whole. It was a year story of the Canadians, really, and 78, 79. So then he called me once and he said, you know, Scotty, you got to do something. Somewhere you got to write a book. And I had somebody else ask me what I was going to write a book. Yes, I was going to write a book, and never got into fruition. I did interview for about 3 months with John Goins' father, Chris. He was a writer, Chris Goins.
Yeah.
But then he couldn't get a publisher, so we only interviewed for about 3 months. And I was tired of really doing all the interviews. And Kenny said, you know, you got to think about it. No, I said, Kenny, I thought about it. It takes too much time. I'm going to Florida, and I don't want to be just tied in. He said, well, let me think about it. And then about a month later, he said, I have a good plan. We'll do it from October till March. We'll do it no stress. We'll hopefully do it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 o'clock, schedule for an hour. And we went some mornings 3 because he takes a long time. But, you know, he recorded everything. So he did everything. He came to Verdun, saw where I grew up. He came to Florida, saw where I lived. He came to East Amherst. He got all my scrapbooks. And I mean, he's such a thorough man that it took 3 years to do the book.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it wasn't stressful. I had a lot of time to do other stuff. And we took holidays, the 2 Thanksgiving, the Canadian and the U.S., and Christmas. We didn't do anything for 2 or 3 weeks. So he's always got a plan.
Scotty, there's one game that stood out for me as a kid watching. You were coaching St. Louis, 71. He makes a save against Jimmy Pappen in Game 7.
Yeah.
Canadians go on to win. Is there one when you were coaching him where you say, man, I don't know how he did that. Like, this is unbelievable?
I don't know. Hard to say. Maybe Yeah, probably a lot of times, but the last game against in '79 when we won in overtime, he did make a big save in overtime to keep it going when we did score. Lambert scored the winning goal against Boston, but he was a goalie that he wasn't never stressed out. I think the reason he never got nervous. He was a stand-up goalie. He wasn't really interested in butterfly, although he had a lot of admiration for Glenn Hall. He might have been the first one that did a semi-butterfly, and I don't know who took over after that. But Ken, he didn't get stressed because he had other stuff to do, and I think mentally he never worried about. He was on a good team. He knew he was a good goalie, and that helped him a lot. And he just kept playing. He's a good athlete, though. He played good baseball. He played for Roger Nielsen baseball in Toronto. Played, when you think about the things he did in his life, imagine when he wrote the book 2 years ago. He told me about it. He called me and he said, "I'm going to do a book," and he said, I think it was called The Class. It's called The Class. So what he did, he graduated from high school in an advanced class. 38 students were always above the others. So he decided in 2 years ago, I'm going to contact as many as I can. And he got 36 out of 38 students all over the world. I mean, you imagine that task. I mean, there's people that graduate 10 years later, they don't know where their class is. I mean, and imagine how patient he didn't. I don't think he knew the word impossible. Like, he just, I said, Ken, how are you going to get all these? I said, I got to work with the school. There'll be some classmates that will know each other. So he wrote the book and he put a chapter on each person, what it was like in class, remembering the 66 to 68 or 67. And then what are they doing now?
So cool.
It's quite a book. I mean, but he didn't get a lot of publicity because it's not a sports book. But I mean, didn't he write the one too on Steve Montador? That was the concussion book.
Well, like the head trauma book, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Scotty, like you talk about all he did outside of the rink. When you were getting to know him as a coach-player relationship, did you see some of this? That this guy's going to go on to do more than just hockey. Could you see how intellectual he was?
Well, it was hard to tell because I thought he had finished a class at McGill when I went to Montreal, but he said he was still taking some other courses, and the report was that he left them on maybe a part of it was contract, but I do know that he wanted to get his law degree in Toronto at Osgood Hall. So he didn't want to commute. He wasn't going to be able to do that, but that's why he went and took the year off. Besides, maybe he wasn't getting paid like he thought, so he had to get it done. But he always had something on his mind, and he did a lot of things.
Yeah.
Scotty, you told me so many stories. I don't want to bring some of them in because they were pretty personal about you and Ken, your relationship. But I have to ask you, when you were dealing with him, were there any times when you say, you know what, I got to figure this guy out? Because most of your players you had figured out pretty quick. Could you figure Ken Dryden out pretty quick?
I didn't really, stress about things except the only time that I say I had to really do something that was something I didn't want to do is we were playing in the 73, my first cup, it would be his second against Chicago. And we were up 3-1, coming back in Montreal to play games 5. And we lost the game 8-7. He was in our goal and Tony Esposito. Imagine a Stanley Cup final game. We're going to win a cup at home finally, because we never won the other cups. I mean, that was the first one for me, but it'd be nice to win it at home. And sure enough, we lost that game. And he kept the media there. He was really upset about losing. And it was a wide open game, which we didn't play many at that time, even though we weren't as good as we were later. And he kind of, I don't think he really meant it, but he said, how can you win when you get so many outnumbered plays? Everybody got caught. He did say both teams, but the story came out worse than that, like it always did. And it said Ken Dryden threw the defenseman under the bus. So I was upset at it, and told Blake I'd been the coach of the Canadians before that, and he called me, and he said, Scotty, I wanted to see Ken after the game, but he kept talking to the media, and he said, I'm afraid if it comes up in the paper what I heard, he said it'll probably be worse. You're going to have to make sure your defensemen are on the course.
Right.
You better talk to them. So I did. I went to our defense, especially the top three, and I said, I'm going to talk to Ken about this. I think he was involved in talking to the media, but it came out a lot worse than it should have been. I said to him, I said, Ken, I didn't like what I read in the paper. I said, it's not easy for me to say this, but in your opinion, you better think about it. Are you sort of getting too big for this, for the way we're going? And he still talked about it later. Like he said, the one thing that you want your parents never to say to you,
yes,
are you getting a swelled head?
Yep.
You said it to me, but he said it wasn't as bad as my dad telling me. So, but he did take them out. He took the defenseman out dinner, and we went to Chicago and won the cup. Wow. I mean, it was another high-scoring game, but we won 6-4, an empty net. But both teams could score goals, and the two goalies were both good. It wasn't because the pucks were going in by the goalies, because they were scoring. I mean, they had a guy. I mean, Makita, Hull, Papin, those guys. They had a good team, Chicago, and we had a good team too. We had a younger,
Hey, Jimmy, by the way, there was actually one goalie that was drafted by Montreal playing in that series, Tony Esposito.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, he would have been with Montreal, but they had so many, Pierre. They had Phil Muir. They had the reason that Tony Esposito was even recalled. I think I told Pierre this story. Al McNeil was coaching in Houston, and he had Tony Esposito and he had Phil Muir, who was a young goalie coming up, great junior, and Canadians got a couple of injuries. Gump Worsley got hurt, and they needed to bring up a goalie. And then, of course, they called Al, and they said, we want Phil Muir. And Al said, Sam, for the last 3 weeks, Tony Esposito has been standing on his head. And that's how, so Canadians brought him up. He was with them the part of that cup win, whatever year it was. Wow. But he that would be before Dryden, and they won the cup. He didn't play in the playoffs, and then they put him on waivers. I mean, I think it was a cooked up deal with Chicago. They were making they used to make a lot of deals with the Bucs. They put him up on waivers, and that's how the Hawks got him. But Tony belonged to Montreal, and Al McNeil's the guy that said to Sam, he's your guy. If you need to replace a goalie, I would bring this guy up, because that's how good he's been with us.
Wow, amazing stuff. Scotty, we appreciate this so much. And again, very sorry for your loss, but these stories are great.
Well, when Linda sent a text the other day to friends of Ken, and we didn't know anything about the 2 years, and then I thought about it, knowing his personality, and I could just see when he got the news 2 years ago that he had terminal cancer. The only thing I could think back in my last 2 years when I've been talking with him, maybe nearly every month, most of the time it was from Boston. I don't know why, but his son lives there, and his grandchildren. He had 2 grandchildren there. So he spent an awful lot of time with the family, thinking back with his wife Linda, and they were living in Toronto. But he was in Boston all the time.
And all the cancer treatment you could get here too in Boston.
But he really didn't want to have his last 2 years, knowing him very well. I would never know if this is fact, but my opinion is he did not want to have any thought of the next 2 years with people continually calling him and that. It's quite a thing to the family and the family members, immediate family, because Linda said the only people that knew he had cancer, and she has never even mentioned what type.
Wow.
She kept that to the family, and she said that she didn't want anybody else to know, and only the family kept it to themselves. So it was quite a I mean, everybody, the players. I mean, he's very. Serge Savard called him. We had a big event in the middle of August, the 76 Canada Cup team, which Bobby Orr attended, and so he was our goalie picked, but he's injured, and our backup. Well, not backup, but we picked Dryden, and we picked Vachon and Cheevers, Jerry. And of course, Rogie went in. The games started to form, and he started winning. We weren't going to change. It's only a 7-game series, and that's. But Serge called Ken 2 weeks before that and said, you know, we're having this reunion. Ken said, yeah, but I don't feel part of it. He said, you guys won. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I would just as soon. Wow. But I mean, that's 2 weeks before he passed away. So I think maybe he didn't. Maybe by that time he was not feeling perfect, you know. But Ken and Serge were, and Bobby Clarkson was the captain of the '72 team. But they've kept the '72 team, all the different things they did in the last 3 or 4 years, the marketing and everything. They were the two leading guys. They and Ivan Cornway were the 3 guys that did all the ranging for. You know, that's quite. I mean, you know, that's the team of the century for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Scotty. We appreciate you taking the time.
I'll talk to you tomorrow. See you later. Bye.
Scotty Bowman joined us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. And Pierre, I think you'd share the same sentiment. I could go on for hours just listening to Scotty tell those stories.
We were roommates for 2 years, and I heard and learned so much from him.
Yeah.
And he's just telling you the truth.
Yep.
And the biggest one is I knew the story about when they were playing Chicago in '73, and I really didn't want him to go down that road. But I think Ken probably told him it's okay to tell that story because it shows that I could get better too.
Yeah.
And so Scotty told a story, and I don't think he would have told it if Ken hadn't told him that it was okay to say.
I don't know where I had heard that before, that story somewhere in one of the documentaries I watched, but Ken did say that. He admitted, he said, I was getting too big for myself and I needed to come down a notch. And that takes a lot, you know, for people to recognize that. And he did, obviously. So just
the team that's amazed that, you know, there's so many great Montreal stories. Think about this for 1 second. 76, 77 Canadians lost 8 games.
That's it, huh?
They lost 8 games. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's certain stories I know about that year that I can't say on the air, but I would say if you were to talk to the players in Montreal, that was probably the season that he was the hardest on all of them.
Yeah.
Scotty was.
Is that the year? Forgive me for not knowing this off the top of my head, Pierre, but was that the year they beat the Flyers?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I heard Ken referencing that, saying that was one of his most favorite wins was when they were able to beat the Flyers.
Well, you know why?
Because exactly.
Yeah, that's why.
Well,
and I mean, that was Larry Robinson. There was a lot of guys there that bucked up big time for Montreal, you know. And but Larry on Dave Schultz was pretty substantial. And earlier in the year, Larry on Gary Dornhofer, they hit into the boards that broke the boards at the Forum in Montreal.
Wow,
broke the boards.
Man, amazing career too outside of the ring too, Pierre. With everything he did in politics, writing. Yeah, it's amazing what he was able to do.
There's 2 players at Cornell that have and Cornell's, Scotty just said it, like an amazing legacy for hockey at Cornell and Ithaca. And I've been to so many games there. I've coached games there. I've watched my son play games there. I watched my son's teams play playoff games there. Like just amazing history at Cornell. I never get bored going to Ithaca, ever, ever, ever. And to think about, in the history of their entire program, they've only retired 2 numbers. 25 belongs to Joe Newendike, who's arguably one of the best college players of all time. And the other one's number 1, Ken Dryden. That's it. No other numbers retired.
Now, you were saying to me off air, you said, hey, if Scotty's too busy and we can't get him, we should try for Mike Schaefer, the legendary Cornell coach who just retired.
We had Mike on last year. Mike came on.
Yes, they crossed paths. I didn't realize that. Mike was there that long, huh?
Well, no, Mike, when you're the coach of Cornell, Mike played there.
Okay.
And then Mike coached, and obviously the Cornellians are really proud of their hockey legacy.
Oh, yeah.
They should be. They're 2 huge sports there. Lacrosse and hockey really stand out, both on the men's and women's side. Football's good, but it's not in the same category as lacrosse and hockey, which can win national championships. Mike was there a long time, and he got to know all those great alumni there. And so, yeah, that would have been when he would, and plus he was best friends and still is with Joe Newendike. So you put it all together. That's pretty rarefied air at Cornell, Dryden and Newendike when you're
ECAC produces a lot of good players, huh?
Yeah, I had an amazing talk with the commissioner of the ECAC this morning.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, we had good talks about Cornell. We had good talks about all teams in the league, but we obviously talked about Ken Dryden a lot.
It's amazing. Good stuff. Well, listen, I see a lot of comments and questions racking up in our comment section over there, so we'll get to you guys in a minute. And speaking of college hockey, Pierre, we got the logos up there now. There you go. You can see.
I love it. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Anello. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. And Sammy. We're very excited to go there. We'll be there the last week in November. Pierre and I will be broadcasting live for one day from Dublin at the Harry Lemon, and then we will be in Belfast at the Harp and potentially at a place called the Merchant Hotel if we get that going as well. So we're excited for that, and then we'll be going back there for the women's tournament at the end of the year. So big shout out to Robert Fitzpatrick, Steve Thornton. By the way,
They lost twice this weekend.
Okay. So
Swiss hockey's really good.
Yeah.
They were on the road. They played 2 Swiss teams. The first game was tied 3-3 after the first period. So, I mean, they play well. Not easy to go down there. They're making progress.
Yeah.
Swiss hockey's really good.
Yeah. Is that Swiss league, Pierre, starting to get better? Because I noticed a lot of these players that are kind of on the peripheral, maybe waiting for PTOs.
Yep.
I feel like 90% of the players so far that have signed overseas are signing in Swiss. So I want to ask you.
The money's good. The money's good. The caliber of play is good. The audience, the fans are phenomenal.
Okay.
Davos, Joey Thornton made Davos really put it on the map, basically, even though they got the big Spangler Cup tournament there all the time. I've been there a lot over the course of my career. I think the biggest thing about Swiss hockey right now is that everybody saw Switzerland as a ski country, and it still is. It's an elite ski country. And I mean, for Olympic caliber skiers, right. But it's now become a hockey country. The Swiss have had some monumental international upsets. They've beaten Canada in the Olympics. They've had some big wins over time. World Junior, they've done some pretty good stuff. So they're putting money into their hockey infrastructure in the country, and I think that's getting more attention and making more people want to play. And I think both on the men's and women's side, which is, I think, really encouraging going forward.
Well, we hope the Belfast Giants will do better in their next time over there. But we're looking forward to seeing all our good friends over there soon. And we'll see them in September, Pierre, this month. We're going to see them at the end of the month here in Boston as we make the announcements for next year's friendship. As we get close, we'll have more information on that and more guests connected to it. Looking forward to that. Of course, our wonderful sponsors, Betway, where you can still go all the way and bet the beauties with Betway. To join the action right now and get your membership, go to the QR code right there in front of you, or go to the details section on the website and sign up. And with your first bet, even if you lose, you can still get up to $200 credit back. Like we said Friday, we got all the NFLs going on, college football, baseball's picking up, the pennant races. Pierre, did you watch any college football with your new group down there in South Carolina?
I watched a lot of college football. Nice. My Tennessee buddies are really happy. I said, well, no disrespect meant to the opponent, but that wasn't an SEC opponent. Some of the Florida people not too pleased with what happened to them in their loss to South Florida. Yeah. So that was a different one. The Alabama guys who were mad last week, they were all happy this week. But again, we'll see how that transition's going forward. Yeah,
You know what game I loved? BC Michigan State, Pierre, was a great game. I
yeah,
don't know if you watched that.
BC's for real. I think BC's
Yeah,
for real.
they're gonna be good.
Yeah, they'll be a good team. A lot of people ask me about the Syracuse football program and the coach running his players after the game, after they beat UConn in overtime. So I actually told them the story. I did that when I was a head lacrosse coach at Babson College.
Oh, wow.
We had a good team. We played a lot of Division I teams, and we played UMass Boston in a game on the road at UMass, and we beat them.
Yep.
And after the game was over, I wasn't really happy with the way my team played. And so I ran my guys for about 20 minutes on the field. And their AD called our AD at Babson and started yelling and complaining about me being, trying to embarrass his program and his players on their field. And I was like, actually, no, I told my AD that's not it at all. I wanted my guys to understand that they had to play for one another. And it wasn't like one shift or 30 seconds or 50 seconds. It was for an entire game. And we never did that. And I didn't like some of the stuff that I was hearing on the sidelines from my players. So I wanted to make an impact right away. And I didn't get in any trouble for it. My AD totally understood where I was coming from, but it just shows you like what I saw as a teaching moment. Another educational professor saw it as me trying to embarrass his group. It had nothing to do with his group.
Wow.
And so I became much like when, Ken Dryden said I needed to hear that. I probably needed to hear that from my AD because it taught me that just because you see it one way,
it's not always
always the way you see it. Somebody else might see it another way. So that was a good lesson for me.
Wow. Good stuff. I think we might have lost Pierre. I'm not sure if I think it was Pierre. For once, it's not my connection. We've been pretty good here in my new home here in Rhode Island. There's Pierre coming back.
I don't know what happened there, Jimmy. That's weirdo. Anyway. So what I was going to say is, the truth is that you learn a lot if you listen and keep your eyes open. That's why the gentleman we had on before, I didn't get a master's in anything, but I got a master's in how to coach and how to live life and how to be a father and a husband from Scotty. And I'm always going to be forever indebted to him for that.
I agree. And it's amazing. And just like sometimes, Pierre, too, and I apologize, I wasn't asking as many questions, but sometimes you're in an interview like that, you just got to if you have a subject like Scotty, you got to let him go. Let him tell the stories. The questions will be answered without you even asking them at times. So it's a treasure to be able to sit there and interview Scotty Bowman. We appreciate him taking the time.
You know what, Jimmy? I got to interrupt you for 1 second and just tell you.
Yeah.
After every game that we worked together, whether we were scouting, whether we were coaching together, it didn't matter. We always went out for dinner somewhere.
Okay.
Every game. And usually it was just the two of us. Sometimes he'd invite a friend or one of his family members might be in town, but very seldom. The discussion was amazing. I would sit there and eat and listen.
Yep.
And he would continually teach. And if he asked you a question, which was very rare, but if he did, you better know the answer. And if you didn't know the answer,
admit it.
Don't say something that wasn't true. Yep. Just say, sorry, I don't know. Because I saw what he did to some guys when they tried to pretend, and he would just, if he didn't think much of me, just let him keep talking. Then he'd grab me after and say, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing. Hey, September coming up for him, birthday.
Yeah.
92.
Yep. September 18th, coming right up. That's amazing. Well, we will have him on here again for sure. And we treasure the time we have with him. All right, let's get to our Q&A right there. What do we got? CMO hockey training. Oh, thank you, sir. $199 from him in the tip jar there. We appreciate that, CMO. All right, what's the next one? CMO gets the next question. Pierre, do you think a 60-point season is realistic for Frankie Nazar? I could see a 20-plus goal season, 30 to 40 assists with top-line minutes and power play time. And would you pair him with Bedard on the wing, or would you split them up?
I'd probably split them up to start. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Connor whether they play him obviously at center or wing. I think if Nazar can do anywhere from 50 to 60 points, that'd be a huge year. That'd be a massive year, actually. I just don't know with Chicago because people are going to load up on him. If you shut down Connor Bedard, if you shut down Nazar, and you shut down Ryan Donato, they can't win.
Yeah.
They don't have enough firepower right now. So I like the direction they're going. Especially with their young defense. I think they've got some really good young defense.
Yep.
And I think they've got some, obviously with Spencer Knight there, they've got a real good evolving goalie. Drew Comesso's another good young evolving goalie, but I'm not sure if he does 50 to 60, that'd be huge. That'd be really good.
All right. Next question. Nairi Keviters. We hear about right D-men and defensemen playing the opposite side. How important is it for a forward line to have one shooter that shoots the other way, either 2 left shots or 2 right shots?
Everybody's got their own opinion. I remember when most of the Soviets had all left shots. They didn't have any right shots. Didn't seem to affect them either way. I just think it's how you fill lanes, how you play, the skill level of your players. I'll give you an example. Chicago, people forget this, but for a long time, especially when they had Letty and Keith on the left side, if you ever tracked it, they'd go right wing, right D, left D, up and out of the zone because they had the fastest skating left D. And even if you thought you could control them, you couldn't, because if you overplayed them on the forecheck, they were skilled enough to move the puck out.
Yep.
So that's, I don't know so much about the left-right stuff. I know one thing. It helps in the offensive zone with your D. And this was Babcock's theory, and I think he was right about this. Have a lefty on the left side and a righty on the right side. It's easier to keep plays alive. And it is.
Yeah,
it is. It is. It's 100% easier.
Is he one of the biggest sticklers about that you've seen?
He was, yeah. Babs used to talk about it a lot. Like I remember once, this was, I'm going to say, well, it's before 2014. So I'm going to say it's probably like this. Let's just say it was probably the spring of 13, when he was, thinking about how he was going to put the roster together for Team Canada. And I was in his office in Detroit. I was there like 2 or 3 days and going over different players. And he asked me about Subban a lot. And I kept telling him, like, I'm just telling you, Subban can play and help you. And the guys will like him. PK's a good guy, and players will like him. And Babs wasn't sure. He never said much more to me, but he wasn't sure. And then in the fall, I remember going into Detroit with the NBC crew. And Babs asked me again. I went down to his office, just he and I in his room. And he says, what about Subban? I said, I see him play all the time. I mean, he's going to help you. Like, he's going to help you. Yeah. And, they kept him, and that team put on a show.
But it's and again, we don't script this, but that's right where I was going to go. The whole Subban situation, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pierre, but that was one of the reasons that Subban remained the 7th D-man, and the extra guy was the left-right thing.
Left-right thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that well. All right. Not losing my memory just yet. All right, next question. Randy Workman. I just wrote a tribute on Danny Gallivan. Jimmy and Pierre, do you have a favorite term of his? Mine is the spinorama. I'll let Pierre take this, Randy, because Danny was a little bit before my time. But
so the Savardian spinorama is what he's talking about, and that was phenomenal. Serge was so good at that. People forgot Serge broke his leg twice, and so he had to find different ways to be quick and elusive. And one of the things he evolved to is what the spinorama. So the Savardian spinorama is definitely one of the better ones. The puck up in his paraphernalia, that's a Danny Gallivan, even though my old partner, Doc Emmerich, utilized that. That was a Danny Gallivan. I think one of the best ones I ever heard Danny say is a cannonading drive. It's a cannonading drive. And the other one was obviously one of the legendary goal calls ever. Scotty talked about 79 and beating Boston, and that's when Lafleur, rather gingerly coming out of his own zone, moves the puck to Lemaire to Lafleur. He scores! Yeah, I remember that one too. So, no, but cannonading drive was one that – those are probably the two, the paraphernalia and the cannonading drive were two that I liked.
All right, next question. Merrick Easthook. Hello, Pierre. Hello, Jimmy. Hey, Merrick. Yesterday was a sad anniversary of the crash of the plane with the Yaroslav players. Pierre, you know everybody. Can you tell us a story about Pavel Demitra in their honor?
I can, and it's a good one. And every time, I thought about this yesterday and thought about it again today. I saw what Bob Hartley did, and I respect Bob a lot. Bob's coaching there now. And, good for Bob for doing that. The late Brad McCrimmon played for me, but I have a great Pavel Demitra story. It was the late John Ferguson that actually pushed Ottawa to draft him. Pavel had broken, I believe, his leg playing tennis his draft year. And John had seen him a lot, and he pushed Ottawa to draft him. I was coaching in Hartford then. And then I left Hartford to go to Ottawa, and Pav was playing in Prince Edward Island. And I had a chance to spend a lot of time with him.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of time with him. And we were on the ice one day, and we were talking, and he was really skilled. Like, he was amazingly skilled. And I didn't think much of it. And then I got a call from Randy Sexton and Ray Sherrill, and they said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm actually in Boston." And they're like, "Can you get to Glens Falls?" I'm like, "Sure. What's up? You want me to go see somebody from Detroit's farm team?" Because that was their American League team. And they go, "No. We want you to pick up Pavel Demitra and drive him to Ottawa. It'll be his first NHL game, and we need you to get him here because it's almost impossible to get him there." So I said, "Okay, I can do that." And I left really, really early. I got Pav, picked him up. We were driving him through Montreal from Glens Falls. So if anybody that knows the road, we went up the thruway and then 87 north through the border. And Pav hadn't eaten the whole day. Like, he was hungry. So I said, "Hey, Pav, I feel bad, but want a hot dog and french fries or something to eat? Because we got to get there so you can play in the game." He says, "Yeah, sure." So I pulled over at a fast food place called LaFleur's in Montreal on the South Shore. And he ate 2 hot dogs and french fries and played his first NHL game about 4 hours later. That was his pregame meal. He was amazing. Pav was awesome, and he was smiling the whole time.
Good stuff. All right. Unfortunately, we got to wrap right now because we got another show's got to record in about 3 minutes and up in the Sick Podcast Network studios. But save your questions. I know there is still plenty to go there. Save them. Ask them tomorrow. We will get to them. We'll start a little early in the questions there. Still trying to confirm a guest. I should know that by the end of tonight, and I'll post in the morning if and when I can confirm that. But big thanks to Scotty Bowman for joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Big thanks to everyone there for their questions and for watching and listening. And of course to Shane up in Montreal working the boards. And to all those affected by the loss of Ken Dryden, we send our condolences and we're thinking of you. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.